Oh,
Yes, this is it. You all know Emily? They've been right.
yes, we know, I know.
We're live.
Good to
This
see you.
is Senate Appropriations, February 28th. We're going through fiscal year 26 budget requests. And today it's, what do we call it? Legislative operations?
Legislative budget process, the legislative branch.
The entire legislative branch's budget.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll let you introduce yourself, so we have that on the record.
Sure, good afternoon. Scott Moore, Joint Fiscal Office, I'm the Legislative Finance Manager. And I bring to you today the legislative budget for fiscal year 26. So I did bring a packet which is posted online. Before we go through it, I just want to give some background, a little bit about what we do. Every year the governor issues budget instructions. Those instructions come in the fall. And then in the fall, I meet with all of the different department heads and talk through year to date actuals from the year before, anything they might have for needs, any areas we can see where we could have some reductions, looking at the staffing levels and put this all together.
So even though the legislative is a separate branch, you still kind of follow in that budget process of the governor sends you the same letters, sends the rest of it.
Yeah. With that said, the budget instructions, when they first came in the fall, had mentioned trying to keep things at about a 3% level. Also had said that the internal service fund expenses would come at a later date, as well as the benefit rates will come a little bit later. So when I first put this together, it was without those two updated areas. So once I've met with all the different department heads and put things together, we bring this whole thing forward to the Joint Legislative Management Committee for their review. They met December 11th and approved what was in the packet, and then we can go through and I'll start with the packet if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So looking at this, the first page is the cover page, second page is the table of contents, and then the third piece of paper, if you will, which is labeled at the bottom number 1, this is the actual legislative branch budgets by department. So we can see there are 5 different business units. The legislature, which consists of not only the General Assembly members, but also the House Clerk, Senate Secretary, the leadership staff, Office of Legislative Operations, Office of HR, the committee assistants are all in that legislature first line item. We have Legislative Council, Joint Fiscal Office, Legislative IT, and Sergeant of Arms. So we look at this page 1 here, we can see that FY25, we asked for the appropriation of $22,427,405. And FY26 recommend increases that to $24,544,703. That's a $2.1 million increase. This particular line item here, this increase to $2.1 million, does include the updated internal service fund fees and benefits, but I'll show you where that changed. So here we can see the change in percentage, 9.44% increase, FY26 over FY25, and FY26 we're proposing that we revert some money, $121,000, which would effectively buy down that increased 8.9%.
Is that money you were predicting to have at the end of fiscal year 25 or something else?
That's money we have now. So essentially, what we do when we look at reversions, it's kind of like the capital bill, which is also my portfolio. We look at anything that's 2 years old or older. Maybe it's an old study, there's something going on, what's left over, we're going to use it. For instance, in this particular reversion, there was in FY22, Sergeant of Arms had some one-time appropriations of additional costs. I can't remember what the terminology was, but additional costs for personnel changes. There's 99 cents left over, so that's included. There was $21,000 left over from JFO for his school expense study we had done, so that's included. So anything that's 2 years old or older, we're not going to use. It would be in that one. Any questions on this first page, page 1?
Does the rest of the presentation go into the details, I assume, of this?
Yeah. So turning to page 2, this is the actual memo that went to JLMC, which breaks it down a little bit. You will see here on page 2, the legislative budget there, for FY26 is only $24 million and $26,000. That's lower because this does not include, at this point in time, the increased internal service fund fees and/or increased benefit rates. Therefore, the percentages are a little bit different. But in general, this does talk about some of the driving forces. So over on page 3, there are no new staff requests in FY26. The one staffing change, if you remember a couple years ago, we had asked, Ledge Council had 2 session-only law clerks, which we'd asked to convert to 1 full-time year-round law clerk. This budget proposes that instead of 1 full-time year-round, it's 1 full-time 9-month law clerk. So it does change the numbers a little bit. But in general, we can see here the big budget pressures. Bullet point number 1, legislative staff, which includes the legislators, the staff, everyone in the legislative branch, had a 6.4% increase in their salaries, which then has corresponding effect upon anything related to that. So, for instance, looking at other benefits that are tied to it, such as the medical leave, anything else that's a percentage of that salary, the salary goes up, the other numbers go up. Increased payroll taxes didn't increase much. It went from 0.033 to 0.044. I just want to point that out that it is newish. It's one of the newer things we have here. So not necessarily huge budget pressure, but more of a notification to remind you all we did have this increased payroll tax.
Can I go back to the number 1? I think I was reading something on the funding for the law clerk.
Mm-hmm.
So since you're changing to the part-time positions to the full-time, there's not a fiscal ask, or there is?
So the fiscal ask basically changed. So it went from 1 year full-time to 1 full-time, but only 9 months. Okay. So although last year's budget converted from 2 part-time to 1 full-time year-round, this budget is 1 full-time, but only 9 months. Okay. So it's a little bit less of an ask in terms of the overall expenditures.
But it's that same 1 position.
It's the same.
So wouldn't it be less money? It was full-time before, now it's only 9 months?
It would be less money at 9 months than full year. Yeah. Legislative expense reimbursements did go up. We all got an extra $5 a day for rooms and $5 a day for meal increases. And then there were some contractual obligations. We have some consultants we contract with that have a 5-year contract, and those contracts change year to year to year. So there were some increases there.
Is that legislative expense reimbursements the only reason for the increase in the legislature line?
That and the legislature's line, that first line there, it is the general members increasing their expenses plus salaries for the other legislative staff in that particular department. So like committee assistants, HR, it's more than just the general assembly.
Right. But that's the big lion's share, because in that line it would only be the committee assistants.
Committee assistants, Ashley, Connor, Molly, HR, so Arlene's department, as well as legislative ops. So again,
right. Okay.
My other hat that I wear.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and the House and Senate clerk's offices as well. Right. So Bloomer and Betsy and all their staffs. That's all. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
He has it.
Do you have another handout?
I do, of course. Thank you, Brennan.
Sorry.
I happen to be turning to the page 4 mark here, Senator Brennan, just to catch you up to where we are. And this is the motion that we proposed at JLMC, basically saying that we'd like to accept this budget proposal with the idea that if it does increase substantially before we did the budget process, I'd inform the pro tem and the speaker. And if you look at the next page, page 5, sure enough, it did increase with the increase in internal service funds as well as the benefit rates. We did meet, the JLMC met December 11th. I had increased notification of internal service fund expenses on December 13th, and increase of benefit rates on December 19th. So we're just about a week too soon. With those increases, it's been about $500,000. So looking on page 6 is actually the breakdown of that increase. On this chart, we'll see that it went up $518,000 from what we had previously brought before JLMC. And again, this is mostly due to benefits and internal service companies.
Okay.
And then pages 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 go through the excruciating detail of every single line item for every single department. I'm happy to go through any and all of them if you like. I can tell you that in general, the biggest reason for the increase, about 90% overall, is because of people.
And there's no new people.
There's no new people. This is just between FICA and Medicare, the health rate increases, health benefits went up about 14%, 14.25% all told. Increase in retirement rates.
Does each, kind of like department, I don't know, we'll call them branch or whatever, have their own page?
Correct, yeah. The one caveat to that is the Sergeant of Arms, just so you know, the Sergeant of Arms includes the Capitol Police. They are in the same group. So if you were to turn to page 11, which is the Sergeant of Arms page, they're both together underneath that branch. The same numbers for everybody.
So the Capitol Police would just be under staff salary?
Correct, yeah. So full-time staff salaries between the Sergeant of Arms, the Assistant Sergeant of Arms, and the 8 Capitol Police officers, which includes Chief Fuller, that would be all under full-time staff salaries.
And are we at full positions filled, both within Capitol Police, but otherwise throughout the whole branch?
The Capitol Police did hire one officer full-time. He's chosen to go part-time, so aside from filling that, the Capitol Police staffing is full. I believe that we're still looking for some potential.
Legislative Council has one open attorney position.
Full-time. So you're gonna fill a half-time police officer if you can find one?
If we can find one, or however that might work out. And then JFO, we're fully staffed. Kevin, are you still looking for session only? We're looking for a session only.
3 years running, Kevin Moore for the record.
For IT?
User support specialist, session only position. So supplement our frontline customer service staff when our demand is much higher.
Okay, so like the work that Delia does? that
Yes,
kind of
or
stuff?
the Delia or Patrick does.
Okay.
And then in the HR department, we are looking for a HR generalist, I guess is the correct terminology.
Yeah, we know in human resources. We're looking for a limited service HR associate, so with a junior level HR person.
How many people are in HR now?
So right now we have myself, we have Eliza Giroux, who's a full-time generalist. We have Maggie Farron, who's our in-house employment counsel. The 3 of us.
Okay. Okay, that's good to hear that almost, other than the 3 you're running it. Okay, any questions for Scott? Did anybody want to bring up the X-ray machine again?
And technically, that would be in this year's budget, so would even be in this package here.
But we can still bring it up.
We'd happy to.
We like
talk about
bringing it up.
And you get ADS support, like you have to pay their.
Correct, yes.
So,
All of the ADS, excuse me, the ADS does give the entire General Assembly support, but that happens to be a line item in Kevin's budget. So IT covers all of that, even though they charge each individual branch, if you will, or department.
is that covered?
Yes, Senator, it's gone up year over year, scrolling quickly. It's not a number we have any control over.
Right.
It's money in, money out, my understanding of that. Money in based off the governor's recommend, and money out in order to cover the expenses at ADS. The services we're receiving that are fairly minimal. It's, redundant internet connection and such.
And looking at this quickly, Kevin, I'm seeing ADS internet went from 99,000, almost 100,000, 118,000.
Yeah. Pretty small compared to what we've seen in other agencies. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, you're free to go about your weekend, Scott. Of course. And if the committee doesn't have any other announcements or questions, we can adjourn for the week.
'I'll
2
second
weeks.
that. I have a 12-part plan.